Hey, today's episode is sponsored by Smalls. In this world we're living in these days, things are a little crazy. Maybe you want to, snuggle up with your cat a little bit. A lot of similarities between my cat, Griffin, in the news cycle. I don't know which day he's going to pee in the apartment or take a poop outside of the cat litter. But one thing is for sure, my cat loves Smalls. This podcast is sponsored by Smalls. If you're a listener to the show, you know that my cat loves Smalls. You know that Matt's cat loves Smalls. You get both of them. You get 60% off your first order plus free shipping. Head to smalls.com. Use our promo code majority for a limited time only. Smalls cat food is protein-packed recipes made with preservative-free ingredients that you would find in your fridge. The best part is it's delivered right to your door. That's why cats.com named Smalls their best overall cat food. Smalls also not just has a whole array of different flavors. My cat loves the chicken one and the one with the turkey. He's more of like a fowl guy, I guess. But they also have all sorts of snacks. Like they have this broth that you can pour in and sort of hyperize the food, I guess.
Make your dry food a little bit more exciting.
Exactly. They got some freeze-dried puffy balls. This comes in, you can get it in with your Smalls order. After switching to Smalls, 88% of cat owners reported overall health improvements. And that, of course, is a big deal. If you have a particularly picky cat, Smalls has a sampler, so you can get your cat to try everything Smalls has to offer. And the teams at Smalls is so confident your cat's going to love their product, you can try it risk-free. That means if the cat won't eat their food, Smalls will refund you. What are you waiting for? Give your cat the food they deserve. For a limited time only, because you're a Majority Report viewer or listener, you can get 60% off your first Smalls order plus free shipping by using the code MAJORITY. That's 60% off when you head to smalls.com. Use the promo code MAJORITY. Again, that's promo code MAJORITY. 60% off your first order plus free shipping at smalls.com. We'll put the link in the podcast and YouTube description. And now, time for the show.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Monday, July 28, 2025. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Brian Goldstone, journalist and author of There Is No Place for Us, Working and Homeless in America. Also on the program today, Trump supposedly makes a trade deal with the EU as reports emerge that the Japanese deal may have been vaporware. Another report, the DOJ gives Ghislaine Maxwell conditioned immunity. This as Trump runs from the Epstein claims. Trump gives Russia 10 to 12 days to end its invasion of Ukraine. Maybe that's 11, maybe it's 10, maybe it's 12.
Gosh, what is this fixation on deadlines?
It's 10 to 12.
It's 13 to 14 then, maybe.
And why declare them publicly?
It's firm-ish.
Semi-firm.
Meanwhile, 2 leading Israeli rights groups accuse Israel of genocide in Gaza this as Netanyahu says no one is starving. At least that's what he says in English. DOJ drops its case versus Los Angeles protesters after ICE officers caught lying about in their booking reports. Trump wants to prosecute Beyonce. I didn't read the rest of the story.
She's a black woman. You know how I feel about those.
Doing country music while black is against the law.
Democrats plan $20 million fund to target Texas redistricting in a hope to scare Texas congressional Republicans. Meanwhile, another whistleblower claims that the DOJ planned to ignore courts. New report, 1 in 5 homes in California are investor-owned. And a poll finds Democrats with their lowest approval rating in 35 years. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us on a Monday. It is
Fun Day Monday.
Fun Day Monday. I guess that's what we're doing here. Fun Day Monday. I don't know. Weekend went a little fast. It could be Fun Day.
Yeah.
It could be Fun Day. It could be Fun Day. We'll see. This report, obviously, there's a newfound. We talked about this with Mehdi on Friday, but there is a seemingly sort of now a broad understanding in the mainstream media that there is mass starvation going on in Gaza. This is not something that happens overnight, although I guess with children it literally could. But there is a broader understanding of it, and we're starting to see more understanding and appreciation that the death toll in Gaza, which of course we've been saying here, and Emma's been beating this drum for months and months and months, is probably significantly larger than the official tally. At this point,
that's all they can verify, basically, in terms of they need to be able to put names to people in order to count the death toll as official, but there are literally just hundreds of thousands of people unaccounted for, likely under rubble.
Miles of rubble.
There's just, there were reports maybe a year ago that they were just like putting flesh and body parts into bags and in some way like sort of semi-counting that as one dead person, but that's not in the official death toll. I mean, Israel hasn't let any journalists outside of the Palestinian journalists who they're assassinating in Gaza in for a reason, and it's because they don't want the West to catch up to what they're doing until it's entirely too late. And that's my cynical feeling about this moment right now. I'm happy to see Obama and other Democrats talking about starvation in Gaza, but my feeling is that this is a bit of a CYA, because we know that the level of starvation that so many people are facing, it might quite literally be too late, even if they were to get nutrition tomorrow or in the next hour.
And I've seen now we're starting to see reports. I mean, again, because of those reasons, much of it is sort of educated guesses, but up to perhaps 20% of the Palestinian population in Gaza could be dead now. And with this said, 2 human rights groups in separate reports released jointly said that Israel's policies in Gaza, statements about senior officials about its goals, and the systemic dismantling of the territory's health system has contributed to their conclusion of genocide. The 2 groups, B'Tselem and Physicians for Human Rights Israel, have not been allowed into Gaza. Their reports are based on testimonies, documents, eyewitnesses, and consultations with legal experts. So there is a growing awareness across, various sectors of, I guess, of the world, and including within the context of Israel. And it seems, like we say, increasingly in this country that Israel's not only guilty of genocide and a willful starvation of the Palestinian people living in Gaza, and we're starting to see one of the indications that something feels imminent, whether it is like, the understanding that journalists are going to get in there, that people are going to start to have documented accounts of what's going on in there from the outside world into Gaza, is starting to, it appears, make many of those who are the architects of this and the enablers of this worried that they may have to be held to account. And at least rhetorically, we're starting to see sort of the most obscene of defenses. It's not hard to find some of these people on Twitter or X saying, well, people were saying that it was a genocide so early. People were saying that there was mass starvation so early that it made it impossible for us to be aware of it. And not the least of which is Anthony Blinken, who is on the X-Files podcast with Christiane Amanpour. This is what Blinken had to say. It's just shocking and appalling.
Of course, I'm very proud of my heritage. And of course, what happened on October 7th resonated in a personal way with me, not just a professional way, because in my own family history, I have, relatives who were forced out of countries by pogroms and came to the United States. A late stepfather who was a Holocaust survivor who survived Auschwitz and Dachau and Majdanek and all these camps. His entire family was exterminated. And so the horrific act of October 7th brought a lot of that to the surface. And I thought it was important in that moment to connect in a personal way with so many people in Israel who were traumatized. But in so many ways, that day in the collective global consciousness has been almost erased by everything that followed. And
why is that?
I wish.
I'm sorry. Like, this level of narcissism is just exhausting. It's exhausting. What happened to Blinken's ancestors is a horrific crime, or family members is a horrific crime, which is why people were saying in the wake of October 7th, let's not commit those crimes again. When we're talking about the starvation, this is going to affect, even if people survive this genocide, like it did for Jews in the extermination camps in the Holocaust. It's going to affect their children on a cellular level. This is the generational trauma that he inflicted on Palestine, that he's using this moment to talk about his own history. You did it to other people. It's going to be the same thing. The genetics of these folks will be indelibly altered by the starvation that they've experienced, and their children will feel the effects. So he's talking about his experience with this when he's doing it to other people.
At those, and I feel this so strongly because I also feel deeply the suffering of men, women, and children in Gaza. I've met with families, American families, Palestinian Americans, who lost their entire families, little girls and little boys. I have the pictures that I've still kept of one family. And so I have some sense of what they're going through, and there's no hierarchy of loss. There's no hierarchy. There's no difference.
Sounds like it.
Between an Israeli child, a Palestinian child.
I mean, what's shocking about this is that he could easily have been citing his family as a fundamental reason why I would not enable this to happen again. And it is as if he had nothing to do with the policy.
No agency.
Absolutely just sort of everything in the passive voice here. And but he is now sort of like, this is his wind up to find out like why, what's going to justify his fundamental role in enabling this. Continue.
Killed in this horror that Hamas initiated. But I wish as well that those who understandably have been so moved and motivated by everything that's happened since October 7th, if they'd spent just maybe 10% of their time calling on Hamas, demanding Hamas put down its arms, give up the hostages, stop what it's doing. Maybe if the world had done that, we'd also be in a different place. But to come to your question, more specifically.
Just hold on, stop. I mean, just like in what possible scenario, aside from the fact that we know on multiple occasions, including under the Biden administration, Hamas offered to release all the hostages. I mean, from day one, release all the hostages if no invasion. But subsequent to that, release the hostages if you promise to end the war. I mean, what possible difference if 10% of anything, of anybody, like what is he talking about here?
Also,
this is just some type of excuse for him to sort of justify, like,
yeah,
they sort of made us do it.
Right. I mean, it's like saying, the Warsaw Ghetto uprising. It was so horrific. And so everything that followed, it was basically understandable. And you have to understand the full picture of the extermination. Like, it's unfathomable. And also, Hamas did not start this on October 7th. Israel has been, quote, putting Gaza on a diet, blocking food and electricity and water and all of that for decades. They have been putting Palestinians on a diet for this entire time period. This is just the final solution of the starvation that has already been in place for almost my entire lifetime.
Does anybody think that Blinken's State Department put 10% of its energy towards getting Israel to stop? Nobody in the world could argue that.
Continue. Let's just see. Give it another couple of seconds.
Calling on Hamas, demanding Hamas put down its arms, give up the hostages, stop what it's doing. Maybe if the world had done that, we'd also be in a different place. But to come to your question, more specifically, look, I think what President Biden told Prime Minister Netanyahu from day one, exactly as you said, was exactly right. And there's a big difference between doing your best to eliminate the threat such that what happened on October 7th couldn't be repeated versus some futile and misguided campaign to try to eradicate all of Hamas that simply is not going to happen and will leave Israel holding the bag. We believe before the October 7th, there were somewhere around 35 to 40,000 armed Hamas militants, again, organized militarily. And that military organization was dismantled by what Israel did, and it was dismantled more.
Whatever.
I mean, it's as if he had absolutely no role in any of this. It is fascinating and also just horrific. I mean, I don't know what else to say.
Just one final note. I would, if you want to feel a little bit heartened, go to the comment section of Amanpour's video here, and every one of them is like the top one here. This guy is a war criminal. Genocide, Blinken still lying. How does he sleep at night? His compliance to the horrific suffering of the Palestinian people will be his legacy. So this ain't working. And they should probably course correct, if only for their self-preservation, because I know Blinken doesn't actually care about Palestinians, despite claiming to carry photos with them around.
And you just headline this, Sam. The Democratic Party's approval rating is the lowest it's been in, 30 years is what you said? So could supporting a genocide and stabbing Palestinians in the back as opposed to in the chest like the Republicans do, could that have anything to do with how people feel about it? I mean, New York primary voters seem to think so.
We'll see. All right. Well, in a moment, we're going to be talking to Brian Goldstone. He is a journalist and author of There Is No Place for Us, Working in Homelessness in America, and couldn't be also relevant both in terms of what's going on in the country in terms of homelessness and also just in the wake of Donald Trump's executive order from 3 or 4 days ago on I hesitate to say that it's actually addressing the unhoused as much as it is sort of some type of notion that, well, we should round everybody up and put them into an institution. But we can talk about that in a moment. We've got a couple of sponsors. Very easy to put off your doctor's appointment, whether you have avoided going or just booking one. And why? Because it's usually a pain in the butt. Maybe you need a dentist appointment. Maybe you've been waiting to go see a doctor for 3 years. Well, ZocDoc makes it super easy to find the doctor right now, and makes it all easy online, and helps in finding out if they take your insurance. Leave it to a professional. I don't know about you, but my social feed is filled with different health trends. Can red light therapy solve every skin problem? Should you be slamming olive oil shots? Let's give the algorithm a rest. Turn to healthcare professionals. With ZocDoc, it's easy. You can find doctors that are right for you and instantly book an appointment online. As I get older, I catch myself thinking I should go to the doctor more, without a doubt. Things like stress, aches, but it can be tough to find one. You want to keep yourself healthy, but it's hard to find the right doctor. That is until ZocDoc shows up. They make it so easy to find the right fit and book an appointment fast directly on their website. ZocDoc is a free app or website. You can search and compare high-quality in-network doctors and click instantly to book an appointment. ZocDoc lets you book in-network appointments with more than 100,000 doctors across every specialty. You can filter for doctors who are near you, filters for ones that take your insurance, ones that are a good fit for you. You can find the type of care you're looking for. Maybe it's you want a good bedside manner. Maybe you want fast wait times. Maybe you want doctors who are considered to have good listening skills. And then the best part is you can see their actual appointment openings. You don't have to go back and forth with
on the phone. And with doctor's offices, it makes it so much easier.
So much easier. You click, you instantly book a visit. Appointments are made through ZocDoc, also happen fast, within 24 to 72 hours of booking. You can even get same-day appointments. Emma, you've used ZocDoc.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's really helpful because it's just so hard to get doctors on the phone. And I don't understand why, everybody isn't using this, to be honest with you.
It's super easy, and they have all sorts of doctors. You got a foot problem, there's podiatrists. I don't know the name of other doctors, but I do know podiatrists. Stop putting off those doctor appointments. Go to ZocDoc.com/majority to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/majority, ZocDoc.com/majority. We'll put the link in the podcast and YouTube description. Also, this episode sponsored by Liquid IV. I really don't have to say too much. Every day I do this show, I am drinking at least one of these. Sometimes I make it into the second one. I feel it the whole day too. It actually, I mean, you got to stay hydrated, particularly in this weather. It is incredibly hot. And if you're soaking up the last bits of summer or gearing up for those back to routine vibes, capture sun-drenched memories with Orange Vanilla Dream Hydration Multiplier from Liquid IV. It's the nostalgic vanilla flavor with notes of candied orange. It's like one of those, what were those like popsicles? I can't remember what the name of it is. But like for ice cream. Creamsicles, yeah, with the orange. Anyways, liquidiv.com. Use the code MajorityRep at checkout. You get 20% off your first order. Liquid IV helps boost hydration. Super easy, super convenient. You get a packet, you tear it, you pour it in, you pour your water in. Helps boost hydration. And for me, I'm using their sugar-free options. They got white peach, they got lemon lime, they got rainbow sherbet, and more. I happen to like the cranberry lemonade. It's delicious. Just one stick plus 16 ounces of water hydrates better than water alone. 3 times the electrolytes of leading sports drink. 8 essential vitamins and nutrients, always non-GMO, vegan, gluten-free, dairy-free, and soy-free. Really makes a big difference. Great to travel with, super easy. Saul's got a headache at the end of the day because of camp. A Liquid IV it is. Savor the last bits of summer with Liquid IV. Tear, pour, live more. Go to liquidiv.com. Get 20% off your first order with the code MajorityRep. Not Majority Report, MajorityRep at checkout. That's 20% off your first order with code MajorityRep at liquidiv.com. We will put the link in the podcast and YouTube description. Quick break. When we come back, we're going to be talking to Brian Goldstone, journalist and author of There Is No Place for Us, Working and Homeless in America. We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigland on the Majority Report. It's a pleasure to welcome to the program Brian Goldstone, journalist and author of There Is No Place for Us, Working and Homeless in America. Brian, welcome to the program.
It's really great to be with you.
Let's start with just sort of, you've written basically an ethnography in many respects, 5 families, let's just sort of take some of the broader pictures. You write about Atlanta, but Atlanta is, I think, in many respects, certainly, according to like indicative of a dynamic that we have going on in the country. But maybe we should just start with the idea of like what you believe is the delta between the official numbers of homelessness and what the actual numbers are.
Yeah, I was shocked to discover in the course of reporting this book and researching it over the 5-6 years, I was really, really shocked to discover that as bad as the official numbers on homelessness are, and it's important to note that in the last 2 years, we've seen the highest level of homelessness on record, according to the official count. As bad as those official numbers are, the reality is exponentially worse. There is this entire world of homelessness, what I refer to in the book as a kind of shadow realm of homelessness that we're not seeing, that is not just out of sight and invisible, but that has been actively rendered invisible. And I point out in the book, by cobbling together different data sources, that the true number of those who are unhoused right now in this country is, and this is a conservative estimate, about 6 times greater than the official number. So we're talking a catastrophe of truly unprecedented proportions. And I think that is just, while the book is based in Atlanta, the reality is that this truly is a nationwide crisis, and it reaches into every single corner of this country.
And so we should say, like, the official number is somewhere in the 700,000s. And so, your sense is that it's closer to over 4 million people. And I want to get to the Trump executive order, because on some level, like the rendered invisible, I mean, it seems to be the fundamental driving principle of that executive order is to, how can we make this this problem seem even more distant, I guess, in many respects. But let's start with, how did you choose? There were 4 families. 5, excuse me. And how did you choose these 5?
Yeah, I mean, it was less a matter, I think, of me choosing them than the question of like, who is going to allow me into their life in such a way that readers will experience what it looks like and what it feels like for parents, for their kids, when this most basic human necessity is always out of reach. And the book actually had its genesis in a magazine story that I reported and wrote for the New Republic over a period of about 7 months. And while I was reporting that book, I was just meeting tons and tons of families and individuals who were working and working and working some more, and it still wasn't enough to keep themselves and their children housed. Some journalists have a problem of, like, they have the story and then they need to find someone who is going to exemplify that story, who's going to carry it. For me, the problem wasn't like who is going to exemplify this. It's how do you narrow it down? I mean, there are so many people, not just in Atlanta, but again, across the country. And so, it was really a matter of meeting dozens of families, dozens of individuals, and through the course of just getting to know them and building trust, figuring out like who has space in their life for someone to just be immersing themselves, in their day-to-day lives. And that was really the aspiration for this book, was to just immerse myself in their day-to-day lives as much as humanly possible. And that's a pretty tall order for anyone, but especially for people who are already, completely, to put it mildly, maxed out with stress, with anxiety, trying to keep themselves housed and to find housing.
And what I was struck with is there are so many different, it feels like, I mean, just from these 5 examples, paths to this homeless. Now, a couple of them at least end up in almost the same scenario, particularly with these extended stay hotels, which is a story in and of itself in many respects. But let's start with, for instance, Celeste, because she was, I mean, lots of challenges she's dealing with, but her homelessness was a function of a landlord essentially trying to, I guess, take advantage of her house burning down by charging her. Her house burns down that she's renting.
Yeah.
And then he, without her knowledge, evicts her. She's obviously not in the house, but files an eviction notice without her awareness. And that just sort of like makes it impossible for her to get into other housing. Walk us through this story.
Yeah. Her story really illustrates why, over the last few years of working on this, it has just driven me nuts to hear people talk about, families and individuals in America falling into homelessness. They are being pushed. And Celeste's story, as I think all of the family stories in the book show us, that this was a matter of being pushed. This wasn't a matter of falling. Her story, as you mentioned, begins in this really dramatic way, a very singular way, with her rental home burning down. It was later discovered that an abusive ex set fire to this rental home. She had recently taken a restraining order out on him. But even though it was this fire that was sort of the first domino that fell, it wasn't the fire that caused Celeste and her children to become homeless. It was the fact that, as you said, months after the house fire, she came to learn that her landlord, which was not a mom and pop landlord, it was a private equity firm called the Prager Group. They own tens of thousands of rental units across the South. The Prager Group demanded, when her home burned down, that she pay rent not only for that current month. The fire had happened at the beginning of the month. She hadn't yet paid her rent. Not only pay that current month's rent, but an additional month as well in order to be released from her lease. She, of course, refused to do that. She thought that was the end of it. And then months later, when she was applying for other apartments, was denied because of an eviction on her record. In Georgia, she didn't even have to be notified that an eviction had been filed against her. She didn't have to be notified in person. The sheriff was able to carry out what's called a tack and mail dispossessory. And when she went to the burned down home, which still hadn't been repaired, in the mailbox on the eviction notice was written by the sheriff, served to fire destroyed property. So, when I've told friends and colleagues about this story over the years, they say, oh, that's so tragic that, domestic violence, this house fire led to them becoming homeless. No, what led to them becoming homeless was a housing system that prioritizes, that has enabled firms like the Prager Group to prioritize profits over all else. over just the basic necessity for a place to live, that has so stacked the cards against tenants and given landlords all of the power. That is what pushed Celeste and her children into homelessness.
And she had 2 children. She was then subsequently diagnosed with, if I remember correctly, ovarian and breast cancer. And then she's looking for assistance. And this I found also just sort of stunning. Just walk us through her timeline briefly.
Yeah. So after the fire, after realizing with the eviction that her credit score has been tanked, that this 3-digit number that has come to determine whether millions of people in this country have access to housing and other basic necessities, when she realizes that her credit score is in effect locking her out of the formal housing market and essentially destroying any chance she has of getting back into housing, even if she can't afford it, she does what scores of other families have done. And she, in the absence of any family shelters, she went to an extended stay hotel. And this place at first was a kind of refuge for her, but she realizes over the next few weeks and then months that she has fallen into what people refer to as the hotel trap, that she has landed in what another family in the book calls an expensive prison. This extended stay hotel is basically an extremely profitable homeless shelter, and they are proliferating across the country. As it happens, private equity firms aren't just buying up the homes that people currently live in, the rental housing. They're also increasingly buying up the very places that families like Celeste are forced into once they become homeless. And so Blackstone and Starwood Capital, during the time that Celeste was living at this squalid extended stay hotel, they purchased Extended Stay America, the largest chain of extended stay hotels, for $6 billion, because they saw how extremely profitable all this precarity has become. So Celeste is desperate to get out of this hotel. She is desperate to get out. And finally, after refusing the term homeless for herself, she really wanted to kind of resist that label, because she had this kind of like name it and claim it theology, where if she put that label on herself, she would sort of become that in a very deep way. But finally, she's just desperate to get out. She's having to choose between going to her chemo appointment for ovarian and breast cancer to treat that cancer, or going to her warehouse job. And just one quick side note, this book is about the rise of the working homeless. And it's very important that we attend not only to the homeless side of that equation, but the working side as well. Because in Celeste's case, it wasn't just the poverty wages that she was earning at this warehouse job. It was the fact that she had no sick leave. She had no benefits, no health insurance. So if she doesn't go to work, she doesn't get paid. If she doesn't get paid, she and her children go from being in this room out on the street, and she goes to Gateway Center, the coordinated entry point to access homeless services in Atlanta. Every city in the country and municipality has their own version of Gateway, where you have to go to try to obtain services. And she is told that despite her cancer, she is not vulnerable enough. Her vulnerability score is too low to qualify for assistance. And in fact, she's told that because she is not in a shelter or on the street, she does not fit the definition of literal homelessness. That is HUD's sort of way of policing who counts as homeless. And, none of the families I write about in this book are counted as homeless. None of them fit the official definition. And Celeste leaves Gateway Center that day completely empty-handed. She's actually told, when she says, fine, we'll go to a shelter. And if that's what we have to do to be considered homeless, we'll go to a shelter. And the caseworker stops. She says, ma'am, actually, you mentioned that your son just turned 15. Celeste says, yeah. And the caseworker says, I'm sorry, none of the family shelters in Georgia allow boys over the age of 13. So he would have to go to a men's shelter by himself. And of course, she's not going to split up her family, and she leaves empty-handed. And that is what, it's bad enough to be homeless. The only thing worse than being homeless in America is not even earning the designation homeless, because then you are you literally don't count. Your experience is written out of the story we tell about homelessness, and you are denied any form of assistance.
Can I ask you a bit more about shelters and the role that they play in defining homelessness? A lot of accounts that we'll hear just up here in New York are that homeless shelters, there's a lot of lack of safety. People are fearful of being robbed. And it still is quite similar up north here that, like, you need to be able to be in a shelter to have certain designations. Like, when you speak to these people, what have been the broad experiences with shelters? And if you could clarify how that fits into how homelessness is defined legally.
Yeah, so just to get to the definition first, so every year when the point in time count is conducted, which is the federal government's official homeless census, where volunteers across the country fan out to count everyone who is experiencing homelessness, only those who are in shelters or on the street are counted. And so that has existed since 2005. And every year, when the point in time count results come out and those numbers are, they then appear in newspaper headlines, those headlines are reflecting what I would argue is just a very tiny sliver of the total homeless population. Here in DeKalb County in Georgia, where I live, which is one of the most populous counties in the South, right now, there is not a single shelter for families in the entire county. So when you don't have shelter, to put it in very real terms, like if you have one shelter in a city and you count everyone who is living in that shelter, that year that the point in time count is conducted, those families would count as homeless. If you close that shelter today, those families will go from being homeless to no longer being homeless simply because they are no longer in that shelter. If they're not on the street, if they do what families do, which is go in their cars or start staying in the overcrowded apartments of others or to these hotels. So it's this very arbitrary and I think very cruel way of limiting the scope of homelessness in this country. We can imagine that there are very clear political motivations to narrow the scope in this way. But New York is exceptional in that there is a right to shelter in New York. So the shelter system is unusually and exceptionally sprawling and large. And many of the families who are homeless in New York are in that shelter system, even though in New York too, there's just a huge number of people who are excluded. But that really is exceptional. In the rest of the country, it's not just a matter that shelters are unsafe, that the conditions are abysmal. It's often the case that they simply don't exist, especially for families. And when they don't exist, or when families can't access them or don't want to access them for very good reasons, they literally don't count.
You have another story about Britt, who also has two kids, younger kids. And the story of housing vouchers. And this dynamic, it seems sort of on some level analogous. This idea of like, if there's no housing, if there's no shelters, then there's no homeless people. This also feels like a bureaucratic way of actually sort of like ostensibly providing for unhoused people, but not ultimately having to by the sort of the context in which they offer. So walk us through what happens with Britt, who also ends up at an efficiency hotel. But I'm particularly like the Section 8 voucher, but tell us that story.
Yeah, I mean, Britt is really interesting because through her own life trajectory, you can kind of tell the story of housing policy in America. Britt is, her roots in Atlanta go back 5 generations. When she was born, she and her family actually lived in public housing. And Atlanta was the first city in the country to build public housing, as it happens, in the 1930s. But by the time Britt was born, Atlanta had become the first city in the country to begin demolishing all of its public housing in favor of this neoliberal experiment in effectively leaving people's housing needs to the private market to meet and take care of. So Britt's family, as she's growing up, is displaced from the public housing where they live. And Britt, as a child, actually experiences homelessness with her mother living in these awful hotels and going from place to place, attending, I believe, 3 different schools in 1 year as a child. And she is determined as an adult with her own children to make a home for herself and her kids in the city. She's determined, not to leave. She also realizes that there is nowhere else to go for her because there really isn't anywhere that is more affordable, where she has family ties and so forth. And so, Britt, she everything for her hinges on the possibility of getting a housing voucher. And when the book opens, she has 2 years earlier won the voucher lottery. I think the fact that we even use the word lottery in relation to this absolutely essential form of assistance is telling. It says a lot about how we treat housing in America. But she wins the voucher lottery, and 2 years later, when the book opens, she's finally gotten off the waiting list. Here is the key to her having a home in the city, being able to afford it. What happens is that ultimately she can't find a landlord who will accept the voucher. There's a lot of talk within housing policy circles about how landlords discriminate against voucher holders for racist reasons, because of the stigma attached to those people, and that is certainly true. But what a lot of that discussion leaves out is how landlords are refusing to take vouchers in these hot rental markets because they simply don't have a financial incentive to, because they can't jack up rents at will. There's so much competition just for a single apartment that they can afford to refuse the subsidy. And when Britt ends up losing the voucher because it expires, the year that she loses her voucher, about 1,600 vouchers are issued to families in Atlanta, and 1,100 expire before they can be used. No landlord will accept it. That is what we did when we went from a model of public housing, of the government being directly involved in providing for housing, to leaving people's housing needs to the market and its whims.
That's just insane. That figure, that the 1,100 of the 1,600 expire. Obviously, these people have been waiting years to get these vouchers, and then they can't use them.
Yeah,
it's just insane. Let's also just one more example, because this is Maurice and Natalia. This is another example of sort of the industry that has been built around people's deprivation. I don't know how else to really say it. I mean, and the private equity stuff with both the owning the rental stock and then also owning the sort of like what happens when you lose the rental stock. It sort of feels like I don't know, somebody coming in and buying, like, we're going to buy all the dollar stores, and we're going to buy also I don't know what the Dollar Tree. And as people go from Dollar General to Dollar Tree because their pay gets cut or whatever it is, or the recession happens, we make money on both ends. But let's talk about Maurice and Natalia, because again, this is another situation where the building sold, they get booted. And then they end up having to get involved with Liberty Rent. And walk us through this, because this is also a crazy story.
Yeah. Something I forgot to mention in relation to Britt's story that is definitely there for Maurice and Natalia as well is the way that, the backdrop for all of this in a city like Atlanta. And here Atlanta is absolutely representative of any number of cities across the country. The backdrop for all of this is a city that has undergone this much celebrated renaissance, an absolute, just transformation of its urban center. rampant gentrification, corporate profits are surging, the signs of growth in Atlanta are everywhere. And, and what we are seeing is that families like Britt's, like Maurice and Natalia's, they're not just being pushed out of the neighborhoods they grew up in, they're being pushed out of housing altogether. So that's the backdrop. Maurice and Natalia, they actually grew up in DC, and they were priced out of their formerly Black working class neighborhood in DC and went to Atlanta as part of what has been termed the new Great Migration of, people whose grandparents, great grandparents fled the Jim Crow South in search of economic opportunity in the North. They come back to Atlanta, to the South, to this Black Mecca, thinking they can achieve their middle class aspirations here, only come to find out, after living in their apartment for several years, stably housed, their landlord decides to terminate their lease prematurely because it's a great time to sell. Their home, they realize, has all along been an investment vehicle for their landlord. And at that point, that when their lease is terminated, they and their children they're pushed into what a caseworker in the book calls the housing Hunger Games. They realize that the ground has kind of shifted under their feet just in the time they've been renting in Atlanta. They're thrust into the housing Hunger Games, and in that context, their credit score is too low because of student debt. They are forced to use this co-signing company called Liberty Rent, where you're basically paying these outrageous fees in order to have this company co-sign in order to get you into an apartment. That actually does nothing to keep them in their apartment. They end up getting evicted when they are only a few days late on their rent. Their landlord, like Celeste's, is a private equity firm, this one based in Nashville called Covenant Capital. And they have been employing this automated eviction system where if you're just a few days late, there's no human to call and talk to. An eviction is filed against you. And before they knew it, they were now living in a studio-sized hotel room at Extended Stay America. In the span of 8 months, they spent $17,000 on their room. That is more than double what they had been paying for the 2-bedroom apartment that they were just evicted from. So, as you were describing it, it truly is dystopian is a cliche to throw around, but there's no other word. It is a nightmarish scenario where there is nowhere to turn.
I want to pull out a little bit, but what have you in the time that you've done this reporting and the book comes out, have you followed up with some of these folks? What happens to these people?
Yeah, I have stayed in very, very close contact with all of them. We are in touch every week, sometimes every day. We're still in very close contact. One of the conditions for their participation in the book was that I would protect their privacy, and also we use pseudonyms in the book to protect their privacy, and especially the children. And also that what is contained in the book would be more or less what I talk about and describe. Fair. But having said that, I will just say, without getting into specifics, that as much as I wanted their stories to have a happy ending, and as much as my editor, just for readability, to not leave readers in this state of desperation and just despair, to give some happy endings. Maurice and Natalia, when the book ends, are the closest, I think, to having a happy end. They actually get into an apartment, but their dreams of homeownership, they realize, are dead. So that's very hard. Since then, all of the families have continued to struggle. They have, even with readers and myself, trying to offer financial support and other types of support, many of them, their credit scores are just too low. It shows that what people need is not a GoFundMe. They don't need necessarily just an infusion of cash, as important as money is. What we need is widespread systemic change. And they have just continued to sort of experience the vicissitudes of belonging to the renter class in the United States.
And what you're just, oh, sorry, Sam, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say, the Biden administration, and this is sort of like, one slice, but this kept occurring to me in the context of Celeste in terms of like credit scores and whatnot. The Biden administration had eliminated medical debt from a credit score, and the Trump administration just reversed that. And so you have a whole host of of people. I mean, I have no idea what the numbers we're talking about, who just in one day, all of a sudden can no longer qualify to rent an apartment. And then it just becomes an incredible spiral where you have these like sort of I don't know what else to say, like these parasitical business entities that are there to just like, we're going to exploit the shit out of this now.
Yeah, I think that is what was so striking, is that at every single step in these families' journeys, as documented in this book, there are entire business models designed not just to profit off their insecurity and to capitalize on it, but to really exacerbate it, to ensure that this crisis of housing and homelessness is not meaningfully addressed. And in that sense, I think that we really have to reckon with that profit motive lurking, and not just the private equity firms, but the co-signing companies, all of these entities, the application fees that families have to pay just to apply for an apartment with no guarantee they'll be, that their application will be approved. They lose hundreds of dollars per application just in applying these non-refundable fees. So homelessness has become big business in this country. And until we really confront that, I think, it's not going to end. And it's not enough to just say we need to build more housing. We need to let the market do its thing. We need to cut regulation, cut the red tape, and then the market will sort of take care of these needs. No, we have to address it at its source, which to me is not to put too fine a point on it, but it's capitalism. It is the fact that the ability to stay housed in this country has been left to a system, and a system that has really no financial incentive in keeping them stable, that is really militating against the security at every turn. And I think that is very much
the entire incentive is to keep them trapped in this cycle. I mean, it's like like payday loan companies. I mean, it has the same dynamic of like, the more, once we get you in our clutches, like you have less and less chance of avoiding our clutches.
Exactly. I mean, there's that famous Baldwin quote about, how extremely expensive it is to be poor in America. I think what these families' experiences illustrate is sort of the flip side of that, which is how extremely lucrative all of this insecurity has become for some.
Yeah, and you hinted at it there, just about this is not being a supply problem. This is a problem of over commodification. And you have these companies like Blackstone that are just buying up these single family homes, and it also gives an opportunity for them to orient. Well, I mean, that's about how purchasing homes and less about maybe some of these more apartment buildings, but it's still the same dynamic that you described, which is just like, the problem is that all the power lies with landlords and corporations and none with tenants.
That's right. I don't know if you guys remember, but during the pandemic, in the early days of the pandemic, there were these two brothers in Tennessee who were driving around buying up hand sanitizer at every Dollar General they could find. And they rented a U-Haul and they stockpiled all of this hand sanitizer in there. And they made headlines. They were rightly vilified. There were calls for them to be prosecuted. And I remember thinking at that time, when I was in the middle of this reporting, that is what we've allowed housing to become in this country. We have allowed for it to be hoarded up, essentially thrown in a U-Haul truck, and then auctioned off to the highest bidder. And we don't call that by its proper name, which is price gouging. We just call that supply and demand economics. We say that, this scarcity has produced this need. Never mind the ways that scarcity itself has been arguably engineered. But that scarcity has produced a condition where this fundamental human necessity is just being auctioned off to the highest bidder. We see it really clearly, like after the wildfires in California, where landlords were jacking up rents overnight by 100%, 120%. And again, there's justified outrage at that. But I think what I'm trying to suggest is that is just the normal rental market in widening swaths of America today. In Atlanta, in Nashville, in Charlotte, that is what it is like to be a renter. Rents being jacked up way past the rate of inflation, past the rate of what it would cost to cover, growing insurance costs and property taxes, just because they can get away with it.
Let's talk about how race mixes with this, because both from your book and from some of the interviews I have read with you, you've outlined how in the context of Atlanta, it was something, I think it was like 93% of people who are unhoused, not necessarily officially, but within the context of this sort of netherworld are Black, but that it really is the most marginalized, economically deprived cohort of people in various cities, and that who that cohort changes based upon what city it is. Could you go into that to that dynamic?
Yeah, it's a great question. Because when I started this project, I really wanted to have, to sort of like check all these demographic boxes. I wanted to have this diversity of subjects where, the white working class character, family, individual. And as I began reporting, as I was standing in line at these food pantries on Saturday morning, every single person in line was Black. And as you mentioned, in a city that is no longer majority Black. Atlanta once was majority Black, but it no longer is. It's about, I believe, 47% Black now. 93% of families who are homeless in this city are Black. So in many ways, to find that one family somewhere off, who is homeless right now would be really forced, because this is what homelessness looks like in Atlanta. The racialized character of housing precarity and homelessness is absolutely pronounced. And as you mentioned, it will take a different form in different cities and different regions. I reported a magazine story several years ago in Salinas, California, where the overwhelming majority of people who were homeless were migrant families and Latino farm workers. So it does vary. In Minnesota, where I recently was, it's Indigenous and Native American families and individuals, but the racialized character is there. And, there's a moment in the book where Natalia, she has enrolled in an associate's degree program at Georgia State. She's reading this history book and her eyes are being opened. She has this moment of revelation where, in reading about sort of the post-Reconstruction period in America and how the promise of 40 mules and a slave was broken, and you had millions of men, women, and children who were freed, emancipated from slavery, into a country where they were systematically deprived of property rights, of ownership rights. She's realizing that is where her own story, her own experience of housing insecurity begins. And, and that was a revelation for me too, because the Wikipedia version of homelessness and housing insecurity in America, it starts with, it's basically a white story. It begins in the colonial era and then through the Civil War with, white soldiers returning home, but their homes are no longer there, and on through, Jacob Riis's Great Army of Tramps, in the lead up to the Depression and so forth. That is kind of the official story of homelessness in America. But I think there's a different story we can tell where, again, millions of people are forced into a labor economy of low wages, rent, and debt. And that has just continued through a history of redlining, of restricted covenants, of all sorts of practices that have just again and again perpetuated dispossession, displacement, and discrimination. And that, I believe, is what has produced that 93% statistic.
Is there, and I mean, I would imagine the lack of political power is both racialized and obviously a function of just the material deprivation. And so it's much easier for it to be submerged as a political issue, and particularly when on the other side of that, you have people making a lot of money who definitely have access to state lawmakers, to city lawmakers, to federal lawmakers. And to the extent that they're advocating for anything, it is nothing that's going to stop this cycle, because that's how they're enriching themselves.
Yeah. I remember during the reporting after, and this is something that happens toward the end of the book, after about a dozen families are evicted at gunpoint from this extended stay hotel, Efficiency Lodge. They're evicted from gunpoint because they have lost their jobs. They can't pay their hotel rent. And the hotel hires this private militia basically to come in, point semi-automatic weapons in the faces of children and their parents, forcing them out of the rooms that they've lived in some cases for years, forcing them out. And a few days after that, I was with all of these families at a nearby park. A local group called Housing Justice League was trying to organize these residents, these families against the owner of this property, trying to organize protests. And it was the same day that the election results were announced, that Biden had won. And at that time, Georgia was on the verge of turning blue, and there was all this excitement in certain, my neighborhood, the neighborhood I live in around in progressive circles. And I remember thinking, standing with these families, they are completely off the radar of both parties. The abandonment of these families has been a bipartisan project, a bipartisan phenomenon. And, they couldn't have cared less standing in that park that this person had just won the presidency and not this person. And I don't want to be glib about that, because there are actual differences. But, over the next 4 years, through the Biden years, the circumstances that families like them were going through changed not at all. And a caseworker in the book, Carla Wells, I really appreciate something she says. She has been in the trenches of homeless services for many years. And she basically says, what my clients need, yes, they need money. Yes, they need resources. But what they need more than anything is power. They feel powerless to even understand what is happening to them. Like, why can't we just have a roof over our head? Why can't we just know from one night to the next where me and my children are going to be living? Just a complete and utter lack of power. And for her, that is the most devastating fact about what these families are experiencing.
How much of what they're experiencing do they perceive as systemic, and how much of it do they perceive as a function of their own poor life choices or something like that? Because I just remember, I think it was Nomad Land. I can't remember but that was
Nomad Land, Jessica Bruders.
Yeah. Yes, we interviewed them. I feel like 5-10 years ago. And one of the things that they sort of really recognized, and this is a lot of people lost their homes during the housing crisis, was that almost to a person, they did not perceive, at least for a long time, that there was anything systemic about this, that it was all a function of, I made bad decisions, I got unlucky, or whatever it was, that there was no sense of that.
I think one of the things that was hardest for me in spending all of this time with these families day after day after day was seeing the shame that especially the parents internalized about what they were going through. even though we would sit for hours and hours and I would be trying to like show them, like, look at the larger picture here. This is not your fault. Like, you are doing everything you're supposed to do. You are working your ass off. There are not enough hours in the week for you to work. Like, you are working 2 jobs, 3 jobs. You are doing everything you are supposed to do in this country to have just stability, and it's not there, and it's not your fault. And even though I would say that, like, the shame was still there. It was just omnipresent for them. And it makes me think of this. There was an article written, I believe in the late 80s or early 90s, by Peter Marcuse, the son of Herbert Marcuse. Peter Marcuse is a brilliant thinker on housing in America. He's largely neglected today, which is a shame. But he had an article in the Socialist Review, I believe it was, called Neutralizing Homelessness. And what he's talking about there is the way that homelessness, this crisis that was mounting back then, that had just exploded in the United States, how it had been neutralized, how it had been stripped of its properly political, economic implications and root causes, and instead had become a story about individual pathology and about life choices and about mental illness and addiction and housing and the economy and racist, a history of racist housing policy. All of that had sort of been left out, and homelessness as a phenomenon had been neutralized. And I think that is what is happening when these families, despite even like knowing the larger picture, like seeing it, like it's still, there's a leap to embracing that. And I think in the same way that until recently in this country, healthcare was also kind of depoliticized. Like if you went bankrupt because you had cancer, and you couldn't afford your medical bills, that was seen as like, well, you should have made better decisions, instead of, no, this is a reflection of how, of this uniquely American malady that is utterly avoidable and preventable. Like in the same way, I think housing and homelessness has yet to be properly politicized in that way, even though an entire movement of tenant organizing and housing justice is helping to change that.
We should say that Trump's executive order issued last week, it seems to me, does exactly, pushes that narrative dramatically. It literally, I think the first line in purpose and policy: endemic vagrancy, disorderly behavior, sudden confrontations, violent attacks. It's all, the implication is that that people are homeless because they're on drugs. They're homeless because they have mental or emotional problems. The overwhelming majority of these individuals, it says, of the people who are homeless on a single night, 275,000, which of course just means like not, on the streets or not in a shelter. it's just a drop in the bucket. Overwhelming majority of these individuals are addicted to drugs, have a mental condition, or both. 2/3 of homeless individuals report having regularly used hard drugs. This is all a way to marginalize people and to obfuscate the fact that this is a systemic problem.
Yeah. And it's nothing new in this country. Since the 1980s, during the Reagan administration, when mass homelessness first erupted, this has been the tactic. And it's a tactic that then went through successive presidential administrations to basically control the narrative around why are so many people deprived of housing in this country. And of course, they don't see it as being deprived of housing. They just see it as kind of a choice to not have a home. This is nothing new. This is an old tactic. And I was really surprised to go back to that earlier moment in the 80s when all of this was first emerging, to find that the Reagan administration actually actively shaped even the research that could be conducted on homelessness. There was an article in the journal Nature called Reagan versus the Social Sciences, because like ethnographers, sociologists, demographers, public health scholars who wanted to study the effects of racist housing policy, who wanted to study the effects of the gutted social safety net, the gutting of low-income housing support and so forth on homelessness. They were denied grants. And the people who were funded were people who were looking at the link between mental illness and addiction or alcoholism and homelessness. The National Institute for Mental Health became the primary purveyor of knowledge about homelessness in America. And that attempt to control the narrative was successful. By the end of the 80s, the New York Times and CBS News conducted a poll of New Yorkers at random asking what causes homelessness. And the number one answer was psychological problems. The number two answer was a refusal to work, laziness. Not a single person mentioned housing. And meanwhile, the fastest growing segment of the homeless population at that time were children under the age of 6. So there is a direct line of continuity from that obfuscation, that concerted attempt to obscure the true causes of homelessness and what we're seeing today. And it's violent, it's horrific, and the attempt to just get people off the street, to push them out of sight, or as will probably be the case, to push them into these concentration camps where they may be forced into free labor. That will do nothing. That will maybe address the tip of the iceberg, those who are on the street, but that will do nothing to address the rest of the iceberg under the water surface, which is in many ways what my book is about, this vast iceberg under the surface. And it will just continue to come out into the open because the root causes are not being addressed.
Trump and Kushner, Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, both slumlords. Trump had cut his teeth, I think, as depicted in that movie with the Apprentice, with Roy Cohn, because he was being sued over discriminatory housing policy. The Trumps were, and then Kushner was a more advanced model of this, of milking all of his tenants for their worth with these decrepit housing developments. And it just, to me, it feels like also orienting our economy around home ownership and how heavily financialized that has been is a big part of this as well. It has widened the gap between owners, which include landlords and increasingly private equity and these big financial firms, and people who are trying to get housing just to survive. Is that the big story here? Is also how the banks and home ownership has widened this gap?
Yeah, I mean, home ownership is becoming elusive for people for whom it was very much within reach, a decade ago, 2 decades ago. So that the ranks of the renter class, and not just the temporary renter class, but a semi-permanent renter class, the ranks of that population is growing by the day. Some numbers that are just outrageous. Like right now in America, there are about 53 million workers who are earning under $10.30 an hour. Since 1985, rents have outpaced income gains by 325%. These kinds of statistics show us that this is not just some bizarre aberration that I'm documenting in this book. These families are not some marginal phenomenon. This is the condition in many cases of renting as a poor and and increasingly a middle class or downwardly mobile middle class member of the society. And this latest budget, the big beautiful budget, it just for detention centers alone, it's allocating $45 billion. That's more than 4 times what the US government spent last year in building new affordable housing. And so, I think I'm not a politician, but if I were a politician, I would be proclaiming every day that we are spending 4 times as much on cages, on putting human beings in cages, as we are on just putting people in homes and building homes. So, there are just these realities that once you see them, it's like like, I mean, I'm an anthropologist. My background is in anthropology before I was a journalist. And anthropologists, like, our basic move is to take the familiar and make it strange, to seem sort of bizarre. And nowhere is that more urgent, I think, than when it comes to housing. Like, how utterly bizarre is it that this is what we're doing? This is what we're doing with this fundamental human necessity. And so, yeah, I didn't think when I finished this book that it could get any worse, but what we're seeing right now is gasoline just being poured on an already disastrous situation.
And what you said earlier about what happened during the Reagan administration and the impact of it 40 some odd years later and continued impact. I think, when we start to see these things, why are they not taking any more data in the Department of Education? Why are they not taking any more data in terms of EPA and climate change? I mean, all of these things are designed to hide the reality of what's going on. Very often a function of capitalism. I mean, the vast majority of roads lead back to that because we have incentivized the wrong things in our society and empowered the wrong people. I can't encourage people to read your book enough. There are in the final chapters, there's policy prescriptions and stories of attempts to organize, which are very difficult for folks who are having to struggle with so many material issues. That the idea of starting a political journey to gain political power, is secondary to making sure that your kids have a place to live, and your family has a place to live. But it's fascinating, and I think at one point the housing as an investment vehicle, and providing housing as a burgeoning business is in many ways the biggest, if not maybe perhaps not the only, but certainly close to the only culprit. Brian Goldstone, the book is There's No Place for Us, Working in Homeless in America. We will put a link to that at majority.fm and in the podcast and YouTube description. Thanks again. Really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for this great conversation.
Thank you. All
right, folks. Really fascinating stuff, and a lot to be learned there across a bunch of different policies and issues that we have in this country. All right, we're going to take a break, head into the fun half, where some of it will probably be fun.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, we didn't get off to the right start with that Blinken clip, which elevated my heart rate, I gotta say.
Nope. Every day, another thing to be.
And if you just put 10% of your effort towards saying Hamas should knock it off and give the hostages
There's
back.
just something about the concerned face, like you are a phony mother effer, truly.
I mean, but how many of us have just put 10% of our efforts into saying people should have homes? And then why? Maybe that's why we have that problem.
Look, if you just put 10% of your efforts towards saying Mandela should tell South African blacks to get their act together, maybe this apartheid stuff would have sorted it out. I'm just spitballing here. It's just, don't you feel like you're the one who should be contrite in this moment?
I just also love the idea that you had complete control over this, but you needed some sort of energy balance from the collective protests for it to tip the scales of your own actions.
If this 10% had said that, maybe we would have been able to get more 2,000-pound bombs to bomb tents, and then this problem would have gone away.
You would have taken 10% of the time to say Israel would never bomb a hospital.
My God.
Oh, God. Remember those conversations?
Well, I certainly do. Some people seem to think it's going to be forgotten, but
I will not forget.
Folks, your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajority.report.com. When you do, you not only get the free show free of commercials, but you get the fun half, which is, at least once or twice a week fun or moments. But it's your support that makes this show possible. You can help this show survive and thrive by going to jointhemajorityreport.com. Jointhemajorityreport.com. Also, Just Coffee, Fair Trade Coffee, hot chocolate. Use the coupon code Majority. Get 10% off. You can buy the Majority Report blend. So check it out. Matt, Left Reckoning.
Yeah, Left Reckoning. We actually had Brian on a week or so ago talking about the same book. So if you want more, I would check that out. It's a really great book. Maybe one of the books of the year. Also, Dave and I did a Sunday show yesterday. Patreon.com/Left Reckoning. You get access to that. Talked about, well, this Blinken clip. Talked about Jeff Daniels and every other liberal taking the wrong message from Doris Kearns Goodwin's team of rivals, which is that apparently they think Lincoln filled his cabinet up with a bunch of centrists.
That's the opposite of what happened.
The rivals were abolitionists.
That he was seen as the centrist.
So Jeff Daniels saying Kamala would have been like Lincoln because she would have put Liz Cheney in her cabinet. Like, I had an aneurysm trying to discuss that and how, I mean, Blinker.
Jeff Daniels, the actor?
Yeah, he's talking with some CNN folks. Yeah, it's on the sound sheet actually today too. If we wanted to.
Why is she like nobody?
Because everyone's a baby.
Because she's a black woman.
No, no.
Why they assume she's this like
no? It's because
liberal?
It's because they don't have any frame of reference for presidential politics besides Barack Obama and the conversation around Barack Obama. Every liberal read one book, which was Doris Kearns Goodwin, Team of Rivals, and they didn't actually read it. They heard Doris Kearns Goodwin talk about it. About how look at all the different personalities in Lincoln's cabinet, but now it's a license to include like Zionists and corporatists in your cabinet.
They don't have enough say in society, Matt.
It's driving me absolutely insane how, I mean, kindergarten our politics is in this country. But anyway.
I guess he would be the dumber from Dumb and Dumber.
All right, folks. See you in the fun half.
Three months from now, 6 months from now, 9 months from now. And I don't think it's going to be the same as it looks like in 6 months from now. And I don't know if it's necessarily going to be better 6 months from now than it is 3 months from now. But I think around 18 months out, we're going to look back and go like, wow. What? What is that going on? It's nuts. Wait a second. Hold on for a second.
The Majority Report.
Emma, welcome to the program.
Hey.
Matt.
What is up, everyone?
Nomi Key.
You did it. Let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon.
Bradley, you want to say hello?
Sorry to disappoint everyone. I'm just a random guy.
It's all the boys today.
Fundamentally false.
No, I'm sorry. Women's
Stop talking for a second and let me finish.
Where is this coming from, dude?
But dude, you want to smoke this 7A?
Yes.
Hi, me? Is it?
Yes.
Is this me?
Is it me?
It is you.
Is this me? Hello, is this me?
I think it is you. Who is you? No sound. Every single freaking day. What's on your mind?
Sports.
We can discuss free markets and we can discuss capitalism.
I'm gonna go start one.
Libertarians.
They're so stupid, though.
Common sense says, of course.
gobbledygook.
We fucking nailed him!
So what's 79 plus 21?
Challenge Matt.
I'm positively quivering.
I believe 96, I want to say. 857-210-501. 1/2. 3/8.
9/11, for instance.
$3,400, $1,900.
5, 4, $3 trillion sold. It's a zero-sum game.
Actually, you're making me think less of it.
But let me say this. Poop.
You can call it satire. Sam goes, it's satire.
On top of it all,
Yeah.
my favorite part about you is just like every day, all day, like
Yeah.
everything you do.
Without a doubt. Hey, buddy, we see you. All right, folks.
It's just the weak being weeded out, obviously.
Yeah, sun's out, guns out. I don't know.
But you should know.
People just don't like to entertain ideas anymore.
I have a question. Who cares?
Our chat is enabled, folks.
I love it.
I do love that.
Look, gotta jump. Gotta be quick. I gotta jump.
I'm losing it, bro.
2 o'clock. We're already late, and the guy's being a dick. So screw him. Sent to a gulag?
Outrageous.
Like, what is wrong with you?
Love you. Bye.
Love you. Bye-bye.
And back.
We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland, Majority Report. Fun half. Should get those phones fired up. We got a lot to get to. Let's get the less fun stuff out of the way first.
Sure.
Yeah?
Yeah. Let's.
And we can make it funner as we go along. We got to get through all the war crimes to get to the fun half.
Yep.
To the funnier, the fun part of the fun half. That's what we really got to start doing.
It's the fash half.
Exactly. The war crime quarter, and then into the back end of the fun half. Trump seems to be sort of creating a little bit of separation between himself and Netanyahu, but I mean, I don't want to overstate things. But here is the one thing that I remember from the 90s and maybe into the aughts, but I feel like it was in the 90s. The thing that we would always hear is that Yasser Arafat would say one thing in English and then another in Arabic. That he would present one face to the English-speaking world and then to another that was the secret truth. That's what we were always told. And so it makes these sort of two appearances by Benjamin Netanyahu sort of interesting. Here is one where Netanyahu is in English speaking to a Christian conference hosted by U.S. pastor Paula White. Paula White was like Trump's spiritual advisor, right? Wasn't she?
She
like
saved me. She saved me from that bullet
so,
that Iran.
I only get
responsible
saved
for.
by 8s or 9s. And she saved
It's
me.
math, folks.
But this is instructive for a couple of reasons. One, aside from Netanyahu lying, we now know that there is scant evidence of Hamas in any significant way stealing
Aid. I mean, even the New York Times is calling it a lie now. So that's how egregious this garbage is.
That's how egregious it is. But it's also important to know that Kufi and folks like this, Christians United for Israel, are massive political force in support of Israel and our policy. Like, Christian Zionism does not get its share of credit.
In terms of numbers of Zionists in this country, in terms of numbers of Zionists in our government, in Congress, Christian Zionists well outweigh Jewish Zionists. And and Christian Zionists don't just have to be the extremists like the evangelicals who, yes, are that constituency. You can have a guy like Biden identify as a Zionist despite not being Jewish. This is like it's an ideology that is not tied to Judaism explicitly.
Here is Netanyahu.
Israel is presented as though we are applying a campaign of starvation in Gaza. What a bold-faced lie. There is no policy of starvation in Gaza, and there is no starvation in Gaza. We enable humanitarian aid throughout the duration of the war to enter Gaza. Otherwise, there would be no Gazans. And what has interdicted the supply of humanitarian aid is one force, Hamas. Again, the reversal of truth. Hamas robs, steals this humanitarian aid, and then accuses Israel of not supplying it.
So is there starvation or not?
Well, that's the
which
thing
one?
is that there's no starvation, but to the extent that there is, that it's Hamas. That's Benjamin Netanyahu in English on Sunday. Let's check in with Benjamin Netanyahu in Hebrew at Ramon Air Force Base on that same Sunday, and I'll read the translations here because it's in Hebrew. Go ahead. To complete this goal of eliminating Hamas and also the release of our hostages, we are advancing in the fighting and conducting negotiations. Whichever path we choose, or on any path, we will have to continue to allow the entry of minimal humanitarian supplies. We have done this until now. But the UN is making excuses and lies about the state of Israel. It says we are not allowed to enter with humanitarian supplies. We are allowing them. They're secured roads, and they have been all along, but today it's official. So the minimal of humanitarian. So now we have to, incidentally, Netanyahu in Hebrew concedes they're letting in the minimal humanitarian supplies, which in English, he says all is stolen by Hamas, supposedly. But do we trust Israel? Is there any reason? Is there any reasonable person in the world who, even if they were allowing the minimal, that they aren't defining minimal as by we can show some trucks on TV?
Or airdrop it in. That's what they've been doing. The airdropping, which is wildly insufficient. Yeah.
Or to alleviate the political pressure. That's what the definition of minimal is.
But that's what he's alleviating the political pressure with that second clip within Israel, Sam, because he's getting criticized by members of his coalition and other citizens of Israel for allowing any food in.
Yeah, Israeli citizens have blocked aid from going in. None of them have tried to, like, say, force aid in. That's not a thing that's happening.
But like, that's the different constituency. To talk to Christian Zionists in the United States, everyone's lying about the beautiful moral state of Israel. But to the Israeli citizenry that he has to be accountable for in terms of, like, keeping his position as prime minister, don't worry. We're letting the minimal amount of humanitarian aid in.
I mean, that is the classic. You know, he didn't say minimal to the Christian to the Christians because you can't, because they, as much as they are Christian Zionists, there may be a couple of stray Christians in there who are like, wait a second, would Jesus have starved people?
Jesus is like, we're going to give you some minimal aid. I mean, insane.
We're all going to get the minimal of God's blessings. The minimal. We'll hit the minimal. Here is Donald Trump with UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer and Lady Starmer in Turnberry, Scotland. Is this Trump's golf course?
Yes.
I think so.
Thanks for palling around, Keir.
You'll be shocked to know he's been, when he's not been doing genocide denial and enabling it, he's been complaining about windmills because he's still upset. I mean, it's been how many years of this fixation that there have been some windmills on his in the vicinity of his Scotland golf course that he finds unappealing.
It's unappealing. Okay, go ahead.
Stand on immigration, and taking a strong stand on immigration is imperative. I don't know. I mean, based on television, I would say not particularly, because those children look very hungry. But we're giving a lot of money and a lot of food, and other nations are now stepping up. I know that this nation is right
It's
here.
a humanitarian crisis.
Right.
It's an absolute catastrophe. And nobody wants to see that. And I think people in Britain are revolted at seeing what they're seeing on their screens. So we've got to get to that ceasefire. And thank you, Mr. President, for leading on that. And also to just get more and more aid in. And again, America's done a lot on this. A lot of countries have done a lot. We're now working with Jordan on getting direct aid drops in. But this is a desperate situation.
Oh, my God.
Why do you have to work with Jordan? I thought Israel is one of your greatest allies in the Middle East. Couldn't you give them a call and just be like, hey, how about you let aid in all the crossings that you control in the open air concentration camp? And you have to airdrop it in. Like, I'm sorry, but if there really is, like, there needs to be... within Israel, I know that there's a lot of folks trying there are some folks that are trying their best to protest this, but there should be marches to the border and dare the Israeli military to stop you. But I mean, that's not going to happen en masse because unfortunately a majority of the Israeli population, overwhelming majority, approves of the ethnic cleansing.
They are behaving as a settler colonial population is basically on rails to behave towards indigenous people in land that they want.
Tomorrow on the program, we'll have a refusenik, young man who's refusing to go serve in the IDF. I believe has served some time in jail because of it. We'll be talking to him tomorrow. Here's Donald Trump. Somebody reminded him, like, in one clip, he's saying, well, I've seen the TV. They look hungry. And here he is bragging about the $60 million in Gaza aid the U.S. has supposedly supplied. We will follow that up with a video of a U.S. Army Special Forces retired lieutenant colonel who was involved in the dispersion of that aid. But here's Donald Trump. Nobody said thank you.
Make everybody happy. Yes, please.
Mr. President, should Israel be doing more to allow food into Gaza?
Say it.
Should Israel be doing more to allow food into Gaza?
What did you say?
Should Israel be doing more to allow food into Gaza?
Well, you know, we gave $60 million 2 weeks ago, and nobody even acknowledged it for food. And it's terrible. You know, you really at least want to have somebody say thank you. No other country gave anything. We gave $60 million 2 weeks ago for food, for Gaza. And
Pause me for a second. You know, part of the reason why these ingrates in Gaza might not be able to say thank you is because of the bombs that are falling on their head, also provided by the U.S. Nobody said thank you for that either.
They can't say thank you because they're starving to death and they can't even absorb nutrients. Also, he's so stupid and easily manipulated that he really probably buys what he's hearing about Hamas taking all the aid, so that he thinks that this Gaza Humanitarian Foundation is in any way sufficient, as opposed to, I don't know, an active part of the
UN?
genocide.
I mean,
yeah.
the GHF was, my understanding, created in part because of Donald Trump's idea, and now it is just massacring people outside of aid depots.
But let's play the rest of that clip, and then we'll follow it up with this other one.
The country gave anything. We gave $60 million 2 weeks ago for food, for Gaza. And nobody acknowledged it. Nobody talks about it. And it makes you feel a little bad when you do that. And, you know, you have other countries not giving anything. None of the European countries, by the way, gave. I mean, nobody gave but us. And nobody said, gee, thank you very much. And it would be nice to have at least a thank you. And I took a lot of heat. You know, when I do that, a lot of people aren't happy about that because they say, well, why are we doing it and nobody else? But I think we had a humanitarian reason for doing it. What's going to happen? I don't know. I can tell you that Hamas, as I said, would happen at the end. You know, we've gotten back a lot of hostages, a tremendous number of hostages, most of them. Now we have dead hostages, and the mothers want them back. And we have 20 people approximately, but that are living. But we have a lot of bodies, and the parents want those bodies as much as they would want their child if that child were alive. I met with parents that were, it was so sad. Sir, please get my son back. How is your son doing? Well, he's dead, but they have his body, and it's so important. It's more important. It's almost like more, but it's as important as if the child were living.
So
These
insane.
people were, I mean, they're devastated. And I said, when you get it down to a certain number, you're not going to be able to make a deal with Hamas, because once they give them up, then they feel that that's going to be the end of them. And what I said is exactly true. You know, they had a routine discussion the other day, and all of a sudden they hardened up. They don't want to give them back. And so
Can you? Okay, or
Israel's
whatever.
going to have to make a
That's the
decision.
end.
I know what I do, but I don't think it's appropriate that I say. But Israel's going to have to make a decision.
What he's referring to is that the ceasefire negotiation, what Israel is basically saying is that Hamas has to like basically commit suicide as an
Disarm.
organization and turn themselves over, and they're basically saying we'll release the hostages if you commit to not ethnically cleansing the Gaza Strip, and they're not doing that.
Here is an interview with a retired Special Forces, U.S. Army Special Forces, Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Aguiar on BBC News. I don't know why BBC gets this. Maybe U.S. Media not so interested.
I wouldn't trust the Times.
Here it is.
Forces shooting at the crowds of Palestinians. I witnessed the Israeli Defense Forces firing a main gun tank round from the Merkava tank.
I tell you that when Donald Trump talks about the $60 million, he is talking about this Gaza, what is it, Foundation Force? The GFF?
Humanitarian Foundation.
Force, GHF. He participated in this. Go ahead.
Forces shooting at the crowds of Palestinians. I witnessed the Israeli Defense Forces firing a main gun tank round from the Merkava tank into a crowd of people, destroying a car of civilians that were simply driving away from the site. I witnessed mortar rounds being fired at the crowds of people to keep them controlled.
As a professional soldier with a very long career, what was your professional opinion of what was happening?
My professional opinion of how the sites were established was what I would describe as amateur, inexperienced, untrained, no idea of how to conduct operations of this magnitude. That would be my most benign assessment. In my most frank assessment, I would say that they're criminal. In my entire career, have I never witnessed the level of brutality and use of indiscriminate and unnecessary force against a civilian population, an unarmed, starving population. I've never witnessed that in all of the places I've been deployed to war until I was in Gaza at the hands of the IDF and U.S. contractors.
Based on the knowledge you have, do you think that you were a witness then to war crimes? I think you're saying that very emphatically.
Without question, I witnessed war crimes. I witnessed war crimes being held by the Israeli Defense Forces, without a doubt, using artillery rounds, mortar rounds, firing tank rounds into unarmed civilians is a war crime.
This video is of the Foundation's armed American security guards opening fire.
I think you hit one.
It was filmed by a U.S. soldier who signed up for the operation in Gaza after he retired and left, he says, when he saw American colleagues and the IDF killing civilians. The soldier is Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Aguilar, a Special Forces veteran of the U.S. Army's Green Berets.
There you go.
I mean, maybe if he had just spent 10% of his time talking about Hamas, there wouldn't be so many war crimes committed there.
Trump talking about how much money we gave to Palestinian food aid and they don't even say thank you or whatever. Like, maybe you could save some money a different way and not send bomb after endless amounts of military aid to Israel. Like, he does this, he's such a liar, obviously, but he does this dance of like, well, we're providing them, this is Israel's problem, but we're trying to help them out by providing them aid. It's like, Israel is not independent of the United States. There are U.S. contractors and the IDF working in conjunction. The United States provides billions and billions and billions of dollars to aid to Israel. If Trump is concerned about being taken advantage of, as he says, then maybe do a rescissions package on that. But of course, that's not the case.
It's nice of Obama to finally get involved too. He said on Twitter that, look, the hostages need to come back, but this isn't acceptable. And this whole thing about the hostages, Jonathan Pollard, a Zionist extremist who Obama pardoned to allow to go back to Israel, said on November of 2023 that Israel should have arrested the families of Israeli hostages taken by Hamas to prevent them from interfering in Israel's war plans. Does that ever get talked about? Or do we still talk about, oh yeah, it's the hostages? Hostages, the concern for the hostages is a lie. And it has always been a lie. And it has been, verbally contradicted by Zionists this entire goddamn time. And still the President of the United States is a former President of the United States saying, look, the hostages. It's a lie. And he is continuing to spread a lie.
Our speculation about why figures like Obama are speaking out now are probably, unfortunately, accurate in the sense that he'll throw that lip service there, but this is a way to kind of head off what we're about to learn.
Yep. And everybody, it's CYA for a bunch of people.
Yeah.
It's CYA for a bunch of people. That's
Obama sold his soul on some of this stuff, and he knows better. Before he was in office, he was having dinner with Edward Said and going to lunches that were talking about Palestinian rights. And to Obama's credit, I will say that his foreign policy in the end, he did take on the Israel lobby with the Iran deal and the JCPOA, and we've seen how belligerent they've been about that altogether. But yeah, the whole Democratic establishment needs to purge these AIPAC-funded Democrats from the party if we want to actually have a blue wave in the midterms, which initial polling, despite how unpopular Donald Trump is, we're not seeing the Democrats at the same level of enthusiasm as we saw in Trump 1.0 at this point before the midterm cycle in 2018.
Yeah, the Wall Street Journal came out with a poll that shows that Democratic favorability is at it hasn't been this low in 35 years. And Democrats are still up in the generic ballot, but not where they were relative to this time in Trump 1, which is indicative of the failure of this strategy where, we can afford as Democrats to be as completely limp and ineffectual as possible, only to the extent that sometimes we're actually offensive and run contrary to what our base wants. But the hatred of Donald Trump will generate what we need in terms of numbers. Now, if you're not up to where you were in 2017 levels at this point, where the 2018 midterms were successful for Democrats, and you've got the Republicans starting to redistrict in such a way that they're going to add 5, maybe more seats in other states that are going to be potential pickups for Republicans from a redistricting standpoint, you've got a real problem. And of course, Chuck Schumer is out there, and he is locked and loaded, ladies and gentlemen. Chuck Schumer's had it, and he's throwing it down. here's a perfect example of Schumer, talking about the right things, but just at one point, dude, take a look in the mirror, watch back one or two of these videos, and tell yourself that you're the most effective guy to be able to do this. You're the guy who should be leading this party. It's just an embarrassment.
Sending Donald Trump's personal lawyer, Todd Blanche, to interview Ghislaine Maxwell while she's in prison, a woman who's been convicted of abusing people, to offer some kind of corrupt deal so that she can exonerate Donald Trump, just stinks of high corruption. Sending Donald
Oh my God. Like, first of all, are they doing jump cuts in there? Like, could he only get
I saw
through?
one, yeah.
It really does feel like they're holding up a sign, that they've got like a makeshift teleprompter, just cue cards, and he can only get through one sentence at a time. And it's all the exact same cadence, right? It's like,
yeah.
What?
Well,
it's just.
He was never selected for his ability to inspire normal people. Like him and Hakeem Jeffries are not fit for this moment because they are meant, like you say, to be concierges for wealthy people.
Yeah.
That's all they are able to do. That's all they'll ever be able to do. And that's why the party is sunk until they're gone.
What kind of bull is this?
What kind
Talk
of bull
on
is
Tuesday.
this? I mean, right? I can't get over that. That video that he put out was about Iran, Trump waffling on Iran negotiations. No side deals. Like,
what are we doing here?
What kind of bull is this?
What kind of bull is this?
Essentially goading Trump into more militarism with Iran,
Got what he wanted.
or maybe not. But like that message is so muddled that it's just
I'll tell you what,
impossible
The
to tell.
Baileys said they don't like it.
It would have been nice to have a side deal, frankly.
Yes.
And you say the thing about like Obama and the Iran deal. It would have been nice if he spoke up once for his the gutting of his actual legacy in that regard. Because when it passed, there was all this talk because Chuck Schumer did not support it in the Senate.
Well,
and there was talk of, this might hurt Chuck Schumer's aspirations. Well, where is he now, Sam?
Matt, let me tell you, the number one job I have is to make sure the left is not anti-Semitic. Okay,
We won't rest,
and I'm not going to. I said it, and I won't. In fact, I was just. The reason why I had to race through that video about Ghislaine Maxwell.
Ghislaine.
Yes.
Ghislaine.
He's been listening to this show. He's got caught Sam's pronunciation bug.
I was running away from not resting. I was running. People were trying to capture me to go take a nap. And I said, no way. What kind of bull is this?
So that's the narrative they're settling on now. Corruption. I heard the House Oversight Dem yesterday on MSNBC saying it, and okay, it's a bit of an improvement, but like we've got to go further. The Democrats cannot like half step on this story. Like
we're gonna half step, and then we're not gonna do anything.
We're just going to criticize what they do.
Right. It's not just corruption. Say this is a way to get around releasing the files that he promised. What is he hiding? Who else is implicated? Donald Trump is the protector of the elites. Yeah. I mean, it's just it's.
Emma.
That's the salient point here. Is that, yeah, I know.
Look, we could say the elite thing, but I don't want to upset some of our donors. So let's not say that.
No kings.
Okay? No kings. I mean,
oligarchs are fine. No kings.
Oligarchs. But the Baileys have no idea what oligarchs are. They don't know. So it's just kings. Just no kings. That's what we're going to do.
Maybe do the Corbyn thing now, I feel like.
Okay. What number is that?
Let me see. Shoot, where's my sheet at?
Let's do Cuomo while we're here.
Yeah.
Just this is This is interesting because we don't have the.
I've been looking for it. It's not out yet.
Okay.
Oh. Do you want to wait then?
No, let's just talk about it. We can do it twice. Okay. Why not? We won't rest. Andrew Cuomo apparently on with Brian Lear, local New York City public radio. Apparently backing off or implying that he's not really involved in defending Netanyahu from war crimes.
Yeah, that's so weird. It's such a change because, it wasn't like back in ancient history, or it must have been ancient history and he's evolved since then, right? Just kidding. He was volunteering his services in late 2024 after Israel had already been accused of committing genocide by Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch.
To be fair to Cuomo, that was back when he thought that was going to help him in this mayor's race.
Right.
And he's like, look, if I gotta defend a war criminal and it's gonna help me with the race. But then he finds out that according to his estimation, he lost over 50% of the Jewish vote in the Democratic primary. Maybe Netanyahu's not exactly the vote getter he thought it was.
No,
but
or working with Alan Dershowitz, who was the one who recruited this amazing team of lawyers to defend this guy. By the way, has Dershowitz been in the news recently with any scandals or anything?
Well, he left his underpants on, Emma.
And then here he is. This is interesting. He's trying to figure out how does he push back. Now, of course, we know what the secret to beating Mamdani is for him. And that is he just needs to build his Instagram likes. But short of that, he also has come up with, I'm going to mock Mamdani's promises for some very sort of like straightforward policy proposals. And he's doing it in such a weird way because he can't really figure out how to do it. Watch this.
They have real issues, and I think it's important that we have a real conversation with them about the issues, because I get the problems, but make sure the solutions aren't so simplistic. That's happened too many times, where people get turned off because somebody runs for office and says, I have a magic wand, I'm going to make everything more affordable, I'm going to make buses run fast, I'm going to wave a wand, and all of that is going to happen. And then nothing happens. And they wind up getting turned.
So you're just managing expectations?
He's talking about how the young people, there's been too many times where people say, I have a magic wand and I'm going to make the buses run faster and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. Like, what times is he talking about? Like, give us an example of who you're talking about. Is he talking about Obama?
Right. I mean, that's the only person I could think of. But
also, I don't think he's saying, unless I missed it, I'm going to use a magic wand to do this. I think he's saying I'm going to use the office of the mayor of New York City.
Look, there's been too many times, Matt, where people put on a Merlin's hat and they say they're going to sprinkle some pixie dust.
They say they're going to do pre-K.
And what is they say they're going to do universal pre-K.
Right.
And
is that some sort of spell?
It's like
never heard of that.
But what is, like, I'm trying to figure out, like, what is his sort of like proactive policy agenda. Well, what I do is I come in and I don't even need a magic wand to make nothing happen.
Yeah, I see the problems, and I am going to be honest, I'm not going to do anything about them.
I see the problem. I hear the problems. I'm going to talk to them about the problems.
Empathize about them.
Right.
But I don't need a magic wand to do nothing. The power, the magic is in my fingertips. I can do it with my eyes. I don't need a magic wand.
I
mean, that's what I just found so fascinating about Cuomo is he's not offering anything. He's just offering not offering anything.
Yes.
Yeah, negation.
Yes.
No one's going to be disappointed because I'm promising nothing.
Right.
I mean, there's no policy agenda. He's not.
It's basically.
He's not running on anything. He is self-consciously running on nothing, and I will be able to deliver.
Nothing good will ever happen and nothing will change. And if you elect me, I will ensure that that's the case.
At least people won't be let down.
I'm the only one who can promise that.
I know you're worried about your rent and your transportation and childcare for your kid, but what I'm worried about is your potential disappointment and feelings down the line.
The real problem you have is you're hoping that'll get better.
I was in the Bronx and I was approached by a gentleman and he said, "Are you really going to be able to deliver nothing?" And I said, "Yes."
On
you
day
can
one.
take that promise. Day one, I'm going to do nothing. And I promise you that will absolutely not get done.
So simplistic. That's happened too many times where people get turned off because somebody runs for office and says, I have a magic wand. I'm going to make everything more affordable. I'm going to make buses run fast. I'm going to wave a wand and all of that is going to happen. And then nothing happens. And they wind up getting turned off. The government and the cynical and the skeptical about the entire system.
I noticed she didn't take a single note while he was talking.
Well, she didn't have to.
Notepad.
It was just nothing. Gonna
Rambling
do
old man
nothing.
with bad
right?
breath.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. She's just sitting there going, "Please don't attempt to kiss me. Please don't attempt to kiss me.
Yeah.
Please
Don't
don't
touch my thigh."
She demanded they meet in public.
Can we do this? Exactly. Let's have this interview in front of everybody in the park, so we don't have
to interview Cuomo, any female journalist, you have to have a pep talk like you're going on a Tinder date. Like,
No corridors
Yeah,
together.
yeah, right. Not at night, in a public place with a lot of people around, okay? Watch out for his magic wand that instead of giving free buses and childcare and all this to people, it just like turns Democrats into a caucus that votes entirely with Republicans and screws over the people that thought they were electing someone who's a Democrat.
I took my magic wand and I turned Democrats into Republicans.
Yeah.
I'd love to see a debate between him and Eric Adams where they're like,
Oh,
I'm not going
please.
to do anything. You're not going to do anything. But
Yeah.
my nothing is different than your nothing.
Well, at least we get the funniness of Eric Adams. Eric Adams is leaning into the memes. He's so bad it's good. It's like a JoJo Siwa of New York City politics.
But the
So,
point is,
no chance Sam gets
I
that.
don't get people's hopes up. And that I'm the
That's
only
all that
one in the
matters.
race who's not getting people's hopes up. That's what I'm going to do.
You want nothing with a cigar or nothing with nipple rings?
Right.
What kind of nothing do you want?
Different flavor. You know what people don't like is feeling hopeful. That's the really scary
Well,
thing
that's
here.
the problem. There's the letdown.
Yeah.
That's what you don't understand. The letdown. And I'm not going, there's no letdown. If you don't promise, then no one feels disappointed.
Decaf coffee.
This is, I don't know. Should we go into the, let's, we don't have time for calls today.
What?
We don't have time for calls. We got too many, clips and IMs here. Tony Two Sticks. Matan Evan got Tim Pool to take his beanie off.
I saw
posted
that.
in the Discord's live discussion. Yeah, I don't know who that Matan even or Evan is. I don't really care. And outside of like Tim Pool's head just looking bizarre, I mean, it does look bizarre, but I mean, maybe that's just because we never seen it. I mean, I feel
That's
like
what's bizarre about it.
Yeah.
I watched it. He said, Tim Pool said, well, first of all, it's funny to keep hearing him referred to as Tim Russia and talk to about the tenant media thing. But yeah, he paid Tim $200 to take the hat off for about 2 minutes, not even 2 minutes, about 30 seconds. And also challenged him on the idea that, which I never heard before, that Tim said he wears the hat so people don't Antifa doesn't recognize him on the street. And so
What?
the idea being
feature.
The idea being that he'll take the hat off and you won't know that it's Tim Pool.
Right.
Oh, is that what he does? So he walks around without the hat. Is that the idea?
I mean, I would say he never does that actually, and probably always is still wearing the hat. But the idea is that he takes it off when he wants to be incognito.
I mean,
that's the exact opposite.
It's
That's not how it works.
Yeah.
You broadcast with the hat off, and then you put it on when you leave.
Right. I thought, I've seen the Bourne Identity. You put a hat on when you're trying to evade. I guess there's no brim on the beanie, but.
Keith from Toronto. Lastly, shofar request for the overdue engagement between myself and the lovely Elle, listeners of MR for 9 years. And massive nerds, ever your loyal fans. Happy engagement.
Congrats.
Particle from Brooklyn. The city has literally made a bunch of the buses run faster in the past decade. How is promising that for more buses a magic wand promise?
Because he used his magic wand to do those trials where they showed that not only are the buses faster when you make them free because people don't have to scan in every single time they get on the bus, but it also, like you said, increases the speed, but lowers the assaults on drivers and other passengers on the bus because there's more people on the bus and more witnesses. So just interesting how the magic wand is, how potent it is.
Well, it's like I liked Zoran because he was charismatic and good at Instagram, but now that I know that he also has a magic wand and he's kind of a wizard, that's like
I like him because he's a Gryffindor.
Yeah. let's not put that evil on him.
I don't think this should have been his campaign song, though.
Come with me, and you'll be in a world of pure imagination.
Future Reactionary got 15 listeners over on Rumble today. Come join the hate-watching horde.
Oh, damn. I like the name Future Reactionary. It's like a future U.S. Army soldier.
Keith, Sam's lovely Schumer impression evokes cozy memories of Michael's Sam impression. It really does. Felonious Monk, do not slap your ancestors' pain in my face like your very arms have tattoos. It is similar to stolen valor, stolen Shoah. Fascist Chuck, I want to destroy my rep for my district, Guy Russia-Thaler. What's the shortest route to do that? I don't know. Not Nick Fuentes. Hello, Sam. My wife and I are now drinking coffee with the Majority Report blend from justcoffee.coop. Left is based. It's great coffee. Sam America's dad. The story told about your father setting the clock ahead is something I also do and felt oddly validated. However, I saw your logic and synchronized the clocks in the house. Thank you, Sam.
I still don't understand it, but to each their own. NC Socialist. Russia has about 2 weeks to end a war, or I'll have to have a chat with Vladimir. Tomo Flank. Happy Fun Day Monday, folks. Here in Britain, opinion polling has Jeremy Corbyn's new party costing Starmer his seat in Parliament. Good. You don't get to keep your cushy job after you decide to murder disabled people in an attempt to reduce the deficit. In sporting news, England have successfully defended their Women's Euro title, and the British and Irish Lions have locked up their Australia Tour victory with a game to spare. Very nice.
Not your state rep. This presidency has set the country and the world back decades.
Yep. I mean, I just keep thinking about the emissions too, and just 4 years lost to any sort of climate mitigation too.
Kyle Eck. Anthony Blinken to Palestinians. Look what you made us do.
Yep.
Indeed. What should we do here? Let's see.
Either that Corbyn clip or...
Yeah, let's do that Corbyn clip. This is Jeremy Corbyn, as Tomoflink just let us know. Like, Starmer is in real danger because Corbyn has started a party. And how long has this party been up and running? Like,
just a few days, if
days?
a week.
Yeah,
it was sort of like early announced by Zara Sultana, I think maybe a month or so ago. But this is really like they finally picked it up in the last couple of weeks here. And just to remind people who Jeremy Corbyn is, he was the Labour leader. And then him and his wing of the party, after leading to a massive surge in membership around 2017, were purged out of the party out of, I think, spurious, I would say, anti-Semitism charges. You can look at the Al Jazeera Labor Files documentary for more on that. And now that he's been removed from the party, and the current Labour Party is supportive of Israel during this whole genocide, now people are looking for an alternative.
And am I mistaken in reading that Labour was extending the ability to vote to even younger people in the UK, to 16 and 17-year-olds, adding them too? That was supposed to be to their benefit. But if Corbyn is like, he's starting his own party that's explicitly anti-genocide, it could be really not something that would go well for Labour.
Could be the end of the Labour Party.
We're going to decide when we had all the responses, and so far the response rate has been massive. They've been coming in at 500 a minute wanting to support and join the new party, and we're open with suggestions for names. So if you've got a good suggestion, bring it on. I want it to be something that's inclusive, effective to mobilize people and bring people in, and so we're looking at all that, but it'll be short and inclusive, and so any ideas out there, I'm ready to receive them.
How does that work? Do you have a short list of names?
We will obviously have to run it down to a short list, and there will be a founding assembly later this year, and that will finally conclude on the name. So the name is well in place before the end of the year. At the moment, though, we want to get the message out there. This is a party about peace, about justice, about equality, and challenging the issues of child poverty in our society while we're spending much more on armaments.
And then you've announced an inaugural conference. There's some speculation that will happen in the autumn. But
yes.
When is that? What would that look like?
That will be hopefully mid-autumn time, but we haven't fixed the date for that yet. We want obviously to take soundings from those people that are signing up on the website, but also there are many independent groups around the country that in some cases have councillors, other cases they're local political activists, broadly in the same sort of political area. They've all got to be brought on board as well. And so the idea is that we announce this today, we announce the broad framework, a lot of support's coming in, and I'm doing a lot of meetings and events all around the country over the next week or so, and then through August and September a lot more.
Just on paper, it's
a big deal.
It's a big deal. I mean, I'm looking at YouGov. They kind of have a rolling poll analysis of favorability in the UK. I mean, Keir Starmer, since the general election, when he was basically even with favorability and unfavorability, is at 67% unfavorable and 23% favorable. Donald Trump just hit his second. I'm sure
that'll be helped by his traveling around holding Donald Trump's golf bag.
Yeah, I mean, it's Gallup last week had a poll here in the U.S. That Trump's approval has now gotten to 37%, and the lowest in his first term that Gallup recorded was 34%. So, like, that's a much worse favorability than Donald Trump has here right now that Starmer is experiencing. So, this moment is so horrible, but like when we see how the Harris campaign embraced these same consultants that were responsible for Labor's extremely weak victory last general election, there's a silver lining to this horrific moment, is that if those politics had won in this country, we might have been in an even worse situation, or I don't know, if the Democratic Party had seen that kind of approach validated.
They would have done the same thing. They would have attempted to purge. I mean, just like they did in 2018 with Ilhan and going after her. They would have tried to purge the pro-Palestine people out of it if Harris.
They're trying to do it now with Mamdani. I mean, That's the thing is, I don't know what their reaction would be any different. That's the I don't.
Fair enough.
I don't believe there's like this body politic that needs to be encouraged or not encouraged. It just makes how easy their job is to sell and to attempt to delude themselves. I mean, when Corbyn was kicked out of labor, they certainly. The Democrats or establishment, the punditry certainly said like this, look what's happening in England. That is a blueprint for us. Now you're not going to hear any of that. They only will ever cite these things when they work in their favor, whether they're successful or not. I think it's just a matter of them maintaining their jobs at any given point. There's no.
Fair enough, and it's not. There's nothing to. Electing Harris, would have been a way better outcome for the world, given what we're seeing right now, and for the country. That's not my argument that I'm making, but it just. I think it makes it harder for them to make that argument here credibly.
If we're lucky, the outcome of this will be to jettison people. I mean, I can't believe like Hunter Biden's been the only sort of like remotely national Democratic figure who's like called all these people to task. You don't even hear the people who are supposedly calling for a different Democratic Party to actually. I mean, we know the names of these people. We know it's the Pluffs and the whole team associated with Harris and Biden, for that matter. And we know it's the Rahm Emanuels. Like we should be here, Democrats, outwardly saying, Rahm Emanuel, stay retired. Go just work on whatever corporate boards you're working on and stay out of it. Speaking of,
I would just say real quick on that, the Reform Party that's currently leading the polls, led by Nigel Farage, has only existed since 2018. So, I mean, the parliamentary situation is a little bit different than ours, and that cuts both ways. One is that you can start up a new party like this, and it might have more traction than the other, being that on the good side, they can't expel, say, Zoran or Ilhan Omar just because they want to, because that's not how the Democratic Party works, as opposed to Labor.
Should we do this Charlie Kirk one?
Oh, yeah.
What do you do if you're Charlie Kirk and the wealthy scion of the Swanson family food empire, or this Swanson frozen dinner empire, has invited you to come do a podcast with him? This is a guy, Tucker Carlson, who has been to multiple prep schools. Like he got kicked out of one in Switzerland, and so he ended up going to one in Newport, Rhode Island. Then he dated the dean's daughter, and that helped him get into Trinity College. And then his parents were in the what was it called? Something like the Silver Club, where you had, if you donated over like $5,000 to the college, which incidentally, $5,000 when Tucker Carlson went to college was probably somewhere between 30 and 50% of your tuition. So they paid almost like a tuition and a half when Tucker Carlson is there. So he's a real man of the people, as you know. And, spending his time in the salt mines of Fox News over the years, he invites Charlie Kirk onto a show. And of course, Kirk knows that Tucker now has an anti-corporate populist message. And how does Kirk get sort of finagle that when he knows like all of his backers are corporate billionaires? Well, he's got a twist.
The entire economy has become hyper-feminized. The education system has become hyper-feminized. But you think about what are the jobs that have had the greatest emphasis of the credentialing, which basically is what college is. It's just a massive credentialing exercise. They're not the more masculine jobs that we need, which is like industrial engineering. They're HR managers. They're norm enforcers. A young man doesn't want to go be an HR manager. They would rather go to a WNBA game than be an HR manager. The push, the thrust the last decade has been, the growth has been in what we call pink collar jobs that men would rather sit at home and kind of just be, slovenly than be caught doing, because it's just so demeaning to how we as men are wired. They're not about creation or risk taking or value proposition or boundary pushing. They're kind of about, well, here are the rules and the norms and we must enforce them. By the way, there is a rule.
They're mom jobs.
Exactly. And you know why they're mom jobs? Because these women aren't moms.
Oh, it's the women.
These women play mom.
Can you
at
pause
work.
it? I'm sorry. So this is just an amazing thing to see here, because this is actually like how conservatives operate, right? The reason that we have more service-oriented jobs or more white-collar office jobs is in part because of the deindustrialization of our economy, and because these free trade deals shipped our manufacturing overseas to enrich corporations, which Charlie's donors were all about, which the conservative movement was all about and was instrumental in orchestrating. But instead of making a systemic critique, Charlie was on Fox News this weekend, singling out, it was Blackstone, I think, for them buying up all the housing in this country. It's never going to be, or he says BlackRock because that's a Democratic aligned firm, even though it is Blackstone and he was community noted. It's never a systemic critique. It's always the people that we have problems with. And here he is blaming women for NAFTA, basically, and for trade deals that outsourced our good jobs. And also, it's also the conservative movement that waged war on unions, which ensured that some of these jobs would be long lasting and people could have careers in these fields. It's the conservative movement, and he was blaming women.
And two more points. First of all, he says BlackRock because we know from Lauren Windsor's reporting that there has been a concerted effort by the petroleum industry to go after BlackRock and to go after Bank of America, and I'm no friends of either. But when they say BlackRock as opposed to capitalism, when they say BlackRock or Bank of America as opposed to the financialization of our economy, they are doing so because they are literally paid by the petroleum industry, by the fossil fuel industry, to go after any investments in ESG, or essentially investment portfolios that attempt to wean us off of fossil fuels. So that's why he does that. And then the other one is like, well, again, how can I obscure the fact that we have a systemic problem with capitalism? Too much ladies in the workforce. Too many ladies in the workforce.
We don't know the rules. They're wearing makeup and it's meant to arouse me.
They're just doing mom jobs. I mean, dude, it's both like it's like
Charlie
they're
Kirk's
doing
gonna
mom
kick your
jobs,
ass, dude.
They're doing mom jobs. And the idea that like that we have become too feminized as a society is just another way of saying we should not have let women out of the kitchen. Women have one function in society, and that is to pump out babies. Period. End of story. Their participation in these in the corporate world or in just jobs in general is ruining the country, is what they're saying.
I mean,
it's not like women, like we need to create jobs for women. Let's have HR.
That's why we've had so many female presidents, is because society is so feminized.
I mean, listen, society has become, the workforce has become more feminized in the sense that women now have the opportunity to work where they didn't have that opportunity decades ago. Women actually have the ability now to have their own credit card, whereas my mother in the early 70s was not allowed to. Women now have the right to say, I don't want to be married to this guy who's abusing me anymore. In fact, my husband no longer has the right to have sex with me when I say no. This is what they're bemoaning. And the idea that this is sort of like, and somehow this is the problem. Like, what Joe Rogan of the left is going to exist where if the idea is we have to basically tell women, you've got to go back to where you were in, 1950, or for that matter, 19 teens. This is all, to be clear, Charlie Kirk has Rush Limbaugh's job on radio now. Like literally, I think he does the 12 to 3 slot. This is what Rush Limbaugh built his career on in with the Clintons and Hillary Clinton saying, I'm not going to stay in the kitchen. Coming out of the Reagan era, which was a pushback to the social emancipation of the 60s and the 70s, Rush Limbaugh emerges, comes up with feminazis. And now you don't even need to say feminazis. Now you just say women. You just say feminists. You just say like, somebody's wearing a pink tie. I got calls because Rush Limbaugh was mocking Dick Durbin on the Senate floor back in 2005 for wearing a pink tie. I remember getting a phone call from a conservative who's like, our enemies are laughing at us. Now, they had to jettison the whole pink tie thing because Donald Trump wears pink ties. But
also wears makeup and tans and lots of gender affirming care for him. And you just see how inherent in the argument is that, like, it's why there's this focus, an obsession with trans women as well, which is that this idea that maleness is supreme and dominant and desirable, and femininity is embarrassing, weak, and maybe a threat to our national security. And that is just misogyny. And it just is, we're at a point right now where it's like very open and expressed without much trepidation, even though I know this has been as old as Rush Limbaugh, but like this manosphere space on the internet, it's added younger people into a very reactionary anti-feminist moment.
And it's not a coincidence that you're looking at two basically fundamentalist religious guys having this conversation. They will whitewash it. They will launder it and make it about corporate. But at the end of the day, what this is genders are not social constructs in their mind, that there is something endemic about that is anti-men or anti-male to work in human resources or the service industry in some fashion. Men were meant to go out on the be pioneers and to
go to the quad and debate college kids.
Exactly.
Right.
But if they concede that gender is a social construct as opposed to being bestowed upon God, and all of these things like, male dominance must exist because it's otherwise you can't have God dominance. There's a hierarchy. And if you break any part of that hierarchy, God, man, well, it's really God, King, Donald Trump, a man, woman.
Who came from the rib of man.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you mess with any part of that hierarchy, you are messing with the entire hierarchy. So you can't just say like, well, down here, well, what about if men and women are equal? No, then, we don't have God and rich people ahead of us on the hierarchy. We don't have the oligarch, which is the king, ahead of us. You cannot mess with any part of the hierarchy or it all falls apart. And that's why they have problems with trans people. That's why it's quite obvious if you're a guy and you buy into this patriarchy, well, of course, it's a problem if there's women. And there's also a racial aspect. Well, women and trans women are problematic. And there's a racial aspect to it as well. We saw that in the context of like, how do we justify slavery? Well, I mean, God, has chosen us. We are the word of God, and we know that we are the higher being. Well, how do we justify taking indigenous people's land? An edict from the Pope that still remains and has been laundered into our federal law via the Supreme Court. Ruth Bader Ginsburg mentioned it in 2005. I mean, all of these fundamentalist Christian, and in many cases fundamentalist religious, broadly speaking, principles get laundered into our society, and that's what Charlie Kirk's doing there.
The conspiracy theories about Michelle Obama are another way, I think, instructive way to look at how race and gender intersect in that way, because conservative men wanted to gatekeep femininity, because how do you control femininity? It is in relation to what a man deems desirable, and given like how open a society is at a given time, that can contract or can expand. And it's racialized in the sense that it's also when black women are deemed like not feminine enough or too masculine, it also justifies further dehumanizing them in the same way that they do it with trans people.
All right, couple IMs, then we're out of here. Iowa Ryan, I used to know 2 girls that survived famine in North Korea when they were babies. They needed care their whole life. The damage is permanent. They need intense care, very expensive. AZ, it's easier to count a dead person who starved than it is to count when the person who was blown up. The CYA crowd of politicians and pundits might be realizing this quickly, trying to get ahead of this before the official death toll skyrockets. Company Townie, Cuomo thinks we need to have real conversations. Wow, what a spicy take from 2004. Franz Brosef. Gonna tell my boss that I refuse to get credentialed to operate any of our new machinery. Ontario Mothan. Really great, smart guest, poignant, informative interview today. Should definitely be in contention for best of. Got to bring up the emoticon matrix, the emotion matrix.
Oh,
exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, we got to have that on hand. Kat. I know this is pedantic and ranks near the bottom of my list of issues with Trump, but the fact that he keeps referring to wind turbines as windmills drives me crazy. It's in the name, dude. Nothing is being milled. Cuomo's arguments there pretty much sum up the entire Democratic plan at this point. Do nothing, hope that people appreciate that you're not a fascist, and vibe. And also, don't get people's hopes up. Woodworker, Trump's Don Quixote era. Hack all things. Your Chucky Schumer voice acting has started a hype train on Twitch. Give us our contractually obligated poggers. I'll give you one of these. Poggers, everybody. Did I do it right?
You did it, I think, right? I don't know. Actually, I'm not the right person to ask. I mess it up every time.
Tim from Boston. Hey, could I call in to tell y'all, the crew and the MR community in general, can I attend sports events together for free? Area code is 857. How we can? Yes, but not today. Romancer. I'm not sure if this distinction matters so much, but I'm not sure why more people don't say that Israel is committing not only war crimes, but also crimes against humanity. Rarely hear that phrase, even though I think it's more apt. They're committing war crimes, but leaving it at just that allows people to still see this through a quote unquote war lens.
Well,
that's a good point.
We can't get anyone to say genocide, so it's just
I do think
war
saying
between
crimes against
Israel and
humanity
Hamas
is that's a very good distinction. I
Yeah.
agree. Because it's what they're doing has nothing to do with a war at this point.
War should be removed from the lexicon.
2 more. Ryan from Rochester. Am I wrong to wonder why journalists hold notepads and pens when they do interviews? It's the digital era. The interview is being recorded. Are they going to touch the pen to paper while asking questions? I know that I keep notes during a lot of interviews if there's something that I want to get to follow up on so that I can write it down and then listen to the person.
Yeah.
But I don't know. All right. In the final I am of the day. We'll go to, let's see, we got here. Wiggleland. I once lived in an extended stay for 6 months. An error on my credit report, and no corporate landlord would rent to me. They are homeless shelters for the working poor and are highly exploitive. Yeah.
And they're profitable for private equity.
Indeed. On both ends. Matt, Brian, Emma, great job today, folks. See you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know some